Hello and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering. My name is James.
And you got Luke.
I don't know.
I just lifted.
Yourself?
We're talking about lift. Oh, you totally ruined this really funny intro that I had about lift. Because on camera, I lifted up into the...
Our four viewers.
You're the worst.
We're continuing our Unprofessional Engineering 101 series, looking at the lift equation.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the thing that we discovered, so we did one on stress and strain the other day. The problem is they always pull in a million other equations. So this one pulled in Bernoulli's effect, and it pulled, it was just in Navier-Stokes equations and all these other crazy things other than just a plain old lift equation. So we're going to try to keep this focused.
Let's keep it focused.
Just on lift.
Just on lift.
Just lift.
Just lift. So lift depends on a bunch of factors, like you were saying, like density of the air, velocity, the air's viscosity and compressibility, the surface area of the flow of the thing that it's flowing around, the shape of the body that it's going over, the angle that the body's inclined at. So there's a whole lot of things that you have to take into account. And if you think about it logically, though, on a stable flight, lift should be pretty close to the weight of an object, right? Because it has to be greater than that to lift it up.
The total weight of the object.
Right. So engineers kind of try and simplify all of these things that they slap together with an equation going L equals KS V squared CL. So L, lift in pounds. K is the coefficient of air pressure, known as the Smeaton coefficient.
And coefficient is also super complex. It has to do with the angle of attack. It has to do so. The coefficient itself is typically an experimental number. It's not an actual live number.
That's how they kind of try and simplify a lot of those other things that get taken into account that we described. S would be the total surface area, V, velocity in miles per hour, and C sub L is the coefficient of lift, which varies with wing shape. Or if you break it down a little bit more, and I think this is closer to what you're looking at, you have L equals 1/2 density V squared, so again, velocity squared, the surface in square feet, and then times the coefficient of lift. So pretty simple, right? Ish.
When you say, basically, if you know the the most difficult thing is the coefficient, and that's that experimental number. All those pictures that you see of airfoils, right?
I see you have a neat one.
I do have a neat one. So the airfoil, the angle of attack and that shape and that profile, that's really what determines that coefficient number. So that coefficient number can change based off of whatever you happen to be doing with that in particular, angle of attack. The area is always the area. The viscosity is always the viscosity and the density. So all of that stuff is pretty, you don't have control over that. That is whatever the number is at, when you're doing that particular given equation. So
what do you have going on here?
Yeah, so when you think about why this happens, the magic of lift. So I remember being a little kid, and before I became smart and could do maths.
Before I became smart
and could do maths, I never understood why does a plane go up in the air? It's I swing my arm as hard as...
It's a difficult concept.
Yeah. It is a relative why does it go up in the air whenever it just... And what it is you have... Basically, if you think of two streams of air that are separate, one stream of air is passing underneath the wing.
Okay.
And it's not just the wing, it's the entire body of the aircraft, but
Sure.
The majority of lift on an aircraft comes from the wings themselves. So the wing shape is super important, but nonetheless. So you have a stream of air that goes underneath the wing, and then you have a stream of air that when it hits the front of the wing goes over top of the wing. And what happens with that is it creates a pressure difference between the bottom side of the wing and the top side of the wing. And you end up with a really high pressure on the bottom side of the wing. So imagine you're pushing really hard on the bottom of the wing, and the pressure that's on the top of the wing, that airstream that's on top, isn't equal. It's less. So as long as you said at the very beginning, as long as that pressure pushing on the bottom of the wing exceeds the lower pressure on the top of the wing, the wing, it's going to go up in the air. It's just it's not going to have a choice but to go up in the air. And
so basically, like, depending on the shape of the wing and the angle that it's
the
at,
angle of attack,
there's only so much air that can go above it.
Yep.
So that naturally the pressure just pushes that other air down, and that's where that high pressure then picks us up.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Boy, that is simple.
And it's also it's a shorter distance underneath the wing versus over the wing. And then when you think about when you've been on a plane and you got the good wing seat and you look out, they have those little ailerons, those
The things that
the
move
things
up and
that
down.
tilt and move up
Yeah.
and down. So the wing itself doesn't move. The entire wing itself stays. But what happens is you can adjust that distance and make it longer or shorter and make slight adjustments to that pressure difference between the underside and the top side to lower the plane and raise the plane. So that's what those do. But the wing itself is always, stationary and fixed. It doesn't change.
Okay, so I have an example for you.
Oh, I love examples.
Let's think about a 747. So this wing example. So you can find all of this information on the internet, but the surface area, let's go with English units or
Okay.
imperial.
I'm
maybe
going to
it
guess
is.
it's about 5,489 feet.
You're close. It's
Square feet.
5,500 square feet.
So close.
The wingspan, so that would be your SREF.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we'll even have the equation on the screen in our video. That would be
Maybe.
helpful.
You can do that.
Okay, thanks for the hard work here, Luke. Wingspan, 196 feet. Aspect ratio, 6.98. You get your altitude, your air density. That's an important one. 0.000587 slugs per cubic foot. True airspeed, 871 feet per second. The weight, 637,000 pounds. That's a lot to
Because
lift up.
you got to counteract that.
Coefficient of lift, 0.52. And then you have your different your different coefficients of lift at different angles. So if we simplify that down to the equations that we were talking about, so lift equals half density times velocity times the surface area times the coefficient of lift. So really we're only looking at four numbers that we care about.
Mm-hmm.
You'll take those and plug those in. So you take 1/2 times the quantity, that 0.000587 times the 871 squared times the 5,500 that you knew off the top of your
I knew
head,
off the top of my head.
times the coefficient of lift, which is 0.52. And that comes out to 637,190 pounds, which is just above that weight that we mentioned.
Enough to lift it.
Yeah, so which makes sense, which is what we were talking about. Now, if you flip this equation around a little bit, as we so like to do, you can actually come up with the coefficient of lift yourself by using these other known values. So if instead you plug in the 2 times the weight, which is the 637,000, divided by all of those numbers, that 0.0058 times the 871 squared times 5,500, you're going to come up with that 0.52. So you can calculate the coefficient of lift on your own as well. Yeah. Pretty simple. Really, 4 numbers is what it comes down to if you think about it.
And interestingly, so a lot of the stuff I was looking into, it was talking about what a pilot can control.
Okay.
And interestingly, a pilot can't control the area that's fixed by whoever's making the plane. The pilot can't control the density of the air. It's wherever they happen to be, if you're higher or lower in
Makes
the
sense.
atmosphere.
So sort of can control if you go higher.
If they go higher. They can't control all of the factors with the coefficient, but what they do control, basically the 2 things that they control is the angle of attack, so they can adjust the angle of attack by, dropping the nose or raising the nose or doing whatever, using those ailerons or whatever they're called, and they can control the speed. So those are the only 2 things. If you think about this whole equation, the only 2 things that, like a pilot, so that pilot that's driving the plane
is doing 2 things.
They're basically just controlling the speed and the angle of attack, and they're also doing some steering and stuff like that. But for as lift in particular is concerned, they're just doing 2 things: speed and angle of attack.
So is lift, and therefore like air density and pressure, the reason that we have so much turbulence on our flights?
Yeah.
Is that them trying to find that happy space?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I'm learning so much, Luke.
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody else is learning something as well and have enjoyed this episode of Unprofessional Engineering 101, looking into the lift equation. Until next time.
See ya.